Welcome to Unscripted and Unstoppable. I am your host, Laureen Quick. And if you are listening today and you've been noticing some changes in how quickly you make decisions, how confident you feel in your choices, or how much energy it takes just to trust yourself, I want you to know something before we even start. I want you to know that there is nothing wrong with you. Many women over 50 have already done all the mindset work. We've worked on our affirmations, our positive thinking, we've reframed, we've gone into therapy, we've gone into coaching, whatever it is it takes to change our minds to make us think and believe that we can create the life we want. And all of that is great work. But what I want to say tonight is the issue isn't always your thinking. Sometimes it's your brain. And your brain has been trained for survival, for responsibility, for vigilance, but not for ease, clarity, or even fast decision making. So, in this scenario, as we get older, sometimes it's not our mindset we need to work on, it actually is our brains. And so I want you to remember that as we go through this conversation. We are talking about the brain tonight, today. We're not talking about your mind and your thinking. So sometimes it's easy to get those confused. So I just want to keep that in your head that remember, we're talking today about the brain. And with that, I want to share with you that my guest is John Kennedy. And John is a neuroplastician, a master executive brain coach, and he is also the creator of something called the Kennedy Method. John doesn't work with mindset or positive thinking. He works directly with how the brain is trained to function and how it processes information, recognizes patterns, regulates emotion, and supports confident decision making. So, in this conversation, we are going to explore how decades of responsibility, emotional labor, and staying alert to the needs of others have shaped our brain, especially us women. And more importantly, we're going to be talking about how neuroplasticity allows the brain to retrain itself, even later in life. We'll look at why hesitation and second guessing aren't character flaws, and why clarity doesn't come from forcing better thoughts. And finally, how the brain can be trained to restore confidence, calm, and trust in the decisions that we make. This is not about fixing ourselves, quote unquote. It's really about understanding how your brain has adapted and how it can be readapted again in service to who you are and the life that you want to live. So, with that, we're going to jump right in. So, John, my first question tonight to you is many women over 50 feel like they've lost confidence or even clarity in the way that they approach decision making. From a brain perspective, what's actually going on, and why is it not a personal failure or a story of decline for us?
Yeah, it's a great question. So basically, the underlying principle that your audience needs to understand, everybody needs to understand, is that neuroplasticity is it's this incredible God gave our brains to change from repetition. So it's not something we create, it's just there. It's part of how our brains operate. And so everything we repeat, as we know, we like to say, oh, all the ruts are getting deeper, but basically, it's just those connections are getting stronger. Neurons that wire together fire together, and those get stronger and stronger. And so it's important to think about our performance in anything. How do we get there, and how can we change it? Really based on neuroplasticity. So one of the things that happens is when we go through changes in life, all of a sudden our environments change. Maybe we moved to a different place, or we lost someone who was important to us. Those are all different adjustments that now our brain has to make in a new environment. So the stimuli is different. What we were comfortable with, we're not so comfortable with anymore. And that's where just understanding that you can overcome that, that you can retrain your brain to be optimal no matter where you are, I think is important.
I think it's very important. And I mean, already I'm getting clarity around this whole idea because all of us in our 50s, 60s, we're going through huge transitions
Right,
and
right.
huge change. And so it would actually be ridiculous to think that our brains would function as well as they quote unquote normally have done
Right.
while we go through all of this change, chaos, in some cases, just pure craziness.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And just knowing that you can change is, I think, important for people. I like to say sometimes I speak in to a lot of different audiences, and I like to leave people with hope, right? That no matter where you are, where you're stuck, if we can retrain your brain, you can get unstuck and
Uh-huh.
you can overcome the things that are holding you back.
Well, I definitely agree. Hope is a good thing to have, and you're giving it tonight because it's not like we're locked into a prison sentence here. We do have some
Right.
methodologies, some tools we can embrace to make a shift and make a change for ourselves. You're really clear that you don't work with mindset, you work with the brain itself. How,
Yeah.
why does this distinction matter so much for us women who've spent years trying to think our way into change, be positive, embrace
Right.
change, all that stuff?
Well, mindset is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just a different approach. So I like to use a computer model. I'm assuming most of your audience uses a computer. Actually, to watch this podcast, they have to be on a computer, right? So the
Absolutely.
computer has three different levels of processing, right? You have your applications. Those are the things that you do. You may have a browser. You may have accounting software. You may have, Outlook or something. And all those applications are what we actually see in the things we do. So I kind of liken that to the three levels of neuroplasticity. It's kind of a loose model, but basically it helps to understand with our brains. So the applications on a computer correlate to the things that we do in life. So if you're a pickleball player, you practice over and over, you get better at it. If you are, whatever you do, you get better at it. Doesn't necessarily mean that if you get better at one, it's going to help everything else because it tends to be isolated, just like your applications. But that we get better at it through neuroplasticity. So you practice over and over again. It's neuroplasticity, those ruts that form that make it better. Now, where all the mindset work, and there's a lot of good stuff, mindset, psychology, power, positive mental thinking, that deals with the mind, which is like the operating system of our computer, right? Everything has to filter through the operating system. It kind of sets the tone and the understanding of everything that works. So that operating system is what determines, again, kind of how well you'll be able to do it, understand each of the applications. And mindset is the same thing. Now, again, it's neuroplasticity. So you can practice mindfulness, you can practice your mindset training, but it takes time,
Mhm.
right? Because you're shifting the way you're thinking. And so it's a good way to go. But again, you have to overcome your negative thoughts and replace them with the positive thoughts, which can take time.
Right.
So where I differentiate then is where I work specifically as the processor. So if you get a new computer, the operating system in every single application works better because it's processing faster. And so that's where I work. This program I developed, we make the brain physically faster and more focused very, very quickly. So it was based on research from MIT that found this type of stimulation will start to change the brain immediately, not just in a day or a week or a month. Now, the beauty of that is just like with a computer, when your brain is faster, more focused, your operating system gets better, confidence goes up, your ability to change your mindset not based on what you're telling it to, but actual performance improvements. So we help people with depression, anxiety, all different kinds of things because their brain is processing faster and then everything they do is better. So yes, they'll play better pickleball, but they'll also be better at communication. They'll also be better at anything else that they do because everything flows through the brain. That's kind of the differentiator I like to do between the mind and the brain.
So what I heard from that was your mind is sort of the the machine, the hardwired machine, right? And then the brain is, I'm sorry, the brain
Yes, the brain is hardware. Yes, yes.
is the hardware, and then the programming is all the mindset stuff.
And yeah, it's more like the software. So your operating
Software.
system
Yeah.
it's very important, right? It filters everything, but you have to think about it. Whereas with the brain training, you just do it and it changes.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I mean, I'm thinking about this with the computer, and it's sort of like, well, the newer my computer, the faster it always works, right?
Right, right,
The more
exactly.
I keep it updated and current from the manufacturer, the better the machine works, which
Yes,
allows
good.
everything else to run smoother and more efficiently.
Yes, very
Yeah.
good, very good.
Okay, good. I'm starting to get this. What do you know?
It is different. I mean, I talk to so many people and they automatically assume I'm doing mind stuff. And again, that's powerful stuff, but there is a very distinct difference in the approach to our mental performance.
So many of us at the age we're at today, we've spent decades caring for other people, maybe working in jobs, managing our emotions, being highly responsible, contributing members of society and the world and our families. How does how does all that affect our brain, and how can neuroplasticity help us rebalance that? Or can
So basically, again, if you anything you repeat over time, everything you do, everything you say, everything you think, those are the ruts that form.
okay.
So, and that's actually where some mindset can come in handy, right? So if you've been spending a whole lifetime caring for someone else and now you have to care for yourself, that's a shift you have to make,
Mhm.
right? You have to start caring for yourself. So that's kind of the mindset piece. But when you change the brain to be faster, again, what our program does is it makes it a much more a faster process. So one of the keys that the program works, and it's one of the basic cognitive skills that are critical to success, is something called pattern recognition. You recognize, mentioned pattern recognition.
Okay.
Recognizing patterns, our own patterns and others' patterns, is critical to changing, making changes, right? So we're in one environment, now we're in another environment. The faster we can pick up the patterns of the new environment, the quicker we can adjust. And so one of the components of the program, and if you want, I can go into the detail, the different underlying processes we work with, but one of those is pattern recognition. Now, ironically, pattern recognition also underlies memory. So as we get older, sometimes our memory starts to fade a little bit. But if
Mhm.
our pattern, our ability to pick up something and have a pattern and then drop the new information into a pattern that's already there, we can remember it much faster as well.
So, if I were to work with you, for example, then, or someone like you, then I would more, I'm guessing here, I would do like exercises around pattern recognition.
Yes.
Is
So
that right?
first, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. First, I have to say there's no one else like me, so it
Okay.
have to be
No
me.
one else. So it
So,
has to
so
be you.
according
Okay.
according to the Department of Defense, there's no one else like me. But
All
anyway,
right.
but yeah, exactly what it is. And the beauty of it, so the exercises we developed, I don't know how much people know my background, but they were developed at the request of the Marine Corps
Okay.
back in 2007. And my daughter was 5 at the time, and I wanted to be able to something my 5-year-old daughter could do at the same time I was training Marines to do. Now, the goal of the Marine training, no one had ever tried this before. The goal was to improve the decision making under the most stressful environments, obviously combat, to save lives. At the same time, we wanted to accelerate the recovery from the wounds of war, post traumatic stress, anxiety, concussions, and so forth. And in a way, it was kind of a God thing that I did it for my 5-year-old, because what I realized, and again, I had this contract in the Marine Corps. I had 3 months to make a difference. No one had ever been able to do this before. And within 3 months, the platoon of 40 guys I was working with went from the worst in the battalion, 3 attempted suicides, rampant post-traumatic stress, failing their pre-deployment objectives, to 3 months later, one of the best ever to go through final pre-deployment training.
Wow.
So emotional healing, mental healing, as well as performance improvement. And that's why I realized, that's why I brought in that research from MIT about the brain changing. We give the brain something very, very simple to do, or so we think it's simple and the brain thinks it's simple, but the brain has to work really, really hard to make it happen.
Hmm.
So the exercises that we work are not digital. Digital is not the best thing for our brains. They're just simply symbols on a piece of paper that we start simple. But as every time you go through the exercise, your brain physically changes to handle the load we give it. And each new iteration brings in more parts of the brain. So all those connections get made stronger and faster. And the beauty about the way our brains work is wherever we're struggling the most, the brain will change the fastest because the brain gets its reward by doing what we ask it to do. And in the process, because it's anticipating this, we release dopamine, endorphins, oxytocins. So people laugh. I mean, it's the funniest thing. Navy SEALs laughing while they're doing these kids' exercises, right? But that's what happens in the brain. And that's what helps it change so powerfully, so
Wow.
fast.
Wow. So, listening to you share about what happened with the group of men that you worked with, wow, what a huge shift in a very short period of time.
Yeah, yeah, it's incredible.
And
And we just keep, starting from that very first one. And obviously, that's a long time ago. So it keeps getting better all the time. And we customize it to different things and bring more parts of the brain and get all different parts of things involved. But that's the basic thing. It was blew me away because I
uh,
came into this as a consultant. It was a long story how I got there. One of our neuroscientists later said this never could have come from traditional medical research because it's so reductionist in nature. I was a consultant. Let's just make this work. And I knew as a consultant, you either succeed or you get fired, right? So I
yeah,
had these months. But I tell
exactly.
you, it's one of the most meaningful experiences of my life because in order to do this, I had to embed with these young Marines for 3 months. Actually, kept going. It was longer than that, but that initial pilot, and that was the most incredible experience of my life. So it all came together, and that is the basis for what we do now. And the same thing with high performers as well as people with ADHD, autism,
Mhm.
dementia, anxiety. The same brain training helps everyone.
Well, so let me ask you this question. A lot of women that I have talked to, worked with, and myself included, we do find ourselves often like second guessing and just being hesitant to make a decision
Yeah,
about something.
right.
So, first off, where does that come from? How come we feel that way?
Well, it's interesting. A lot of times that happens as we get older, and it's men too, because we notice this. One of the reasons is because so our kind of our model of our performance as three overlapping spheres, like a Venn diagram.
Okay,
So one is experience. Everything is experienced in our life. The other is everything we've learned in our life, right? And they overlap.
right.
Now, the third is just mental processing speed, which is where we improve this ability. But in order to perform, we have to match up pattern recognition, right? What we learn. And if someone asks us a question, we have to match that up. Now, one of the things as we get older is we just have so much information and experience, right? You ask a 20-year-old a question, it's yes or no. You ask us, it's well, maybe it depends because there's so much more data that we're processing to try to get to that conclusion. And
Hmm.
that's where a faster brain that goes away, right? Because we can match that up much faster. So that's a big reason for that. It's not that hesitation is not always a bad thing. It means we're coming to a better decision than a 20-year-old, for example.
Right. Well, and we just have more information to sift through.
Right, exactly.
So we have this wealth of experience and knowledge in our heads that we're processing through. And then if we are doing it slightly slower than your average healthy brain, that might slow it
Right.
down as well. But so it's not that we're incapable of making decisions. It's just we have a lot of information to sift through before we're able to actually pull the trigger and say, yes, we're doing it, or no, we're not, or whatever the solution might be.
Exactly. And that's where we help. We just make that faster, that ability faster.
And so you work with processing speed and also this pattern recognition. How do those functions lead to better confidence in making decisions and speaking up and knowing what we want and what to do?
Well, one of one of the principles of my training program is not to stop to fix mistakes, which goes against every other program out there. I've worked with people with all kinds of issues, with Alzheimer's, with memory issues, and they're always told to be to do things correctly. The problem is that adds anxiety, and it lets us focus on being accurate instead of smooth processing. So once you free, and I had a woman once start crying once when I told her you don't have to stop to fix mistakes. She said, my whole life I was totally perfect. But when you release that from yourself, your confidence goes up because it doesn't matter anymore. What you're doing, your brain is making these decisions. It's okay to make mistakes. And the goal we're trying to get people to is, well, there's three criteria: speed, accuracy, and smoothness. Accuracy is the least important. Speed is important because we're processing faster, but the most important is what I call smoothness. When your brain is processing smoothly, everything that normally all the little micro decisions you would make consciously are now going into the unconscious. Some people call that flow state or being in the zone.
Hmm.
And so when you're doing that, you are absolutely confident because you're also improving your anticipation. You can anticipate what's coming before it happens. And so when you release that forced perfection, and no matter what you do is going to be okay, your brain will adjust so you will do it accurately, but you'll be smooth and fast. And so confidence goes through the roof because you're not, there's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to hold you back.
So don't worry about being perfect.
Yes.
And we
Yes.
know that because, every decision is followed by many times a pivot, right? We make a decision and then we get new information and we have to shift and adjust and adapt.
Right. But it's
Yeah.
also the fact that because you have your anticipation built up, you're much less likely to make a mistake because you get in this flow. Example I like to use about this is an Olympic skier I trained a few years ago. So she's going down the hill at 100 miles an hour. After the training, she says she can ski faster without falling because she can see the snow conditions further out. Now the snow's the same and her eye's the same, but all those little micro decisions she used to have to make are now back here in her unconscious, so she can look out ahead and see where she's going. And that I use a skier as an example because she's going so fast, but it's the same thing with us. If we're in a situation where we are anticipating what we need to do or say, we're much more confident in our ability to make that response. Now, another reason I tell people not to worry about mistakes is there's something called a brain hiccup. When our brain is under pressure to do or say something, it'll throw the first thing out there it can think of just to relieve the pressure. So
Hmm.
we've all said the wrong thing or done the wrong thing. Those are typically just brain hiccups. Now, obviously, when your brain is smoother and faster, those go away because you're not under that pressure anymore.
Okay, so then let me ask you this question. So the neuroplasticity is just that my brain has flexibility to adapt and adjust.
Uh-huh.
And the exercises that you share are ones that help that adaption improve in
Yes.
terms of speed, accuracy, and ultimately that leads to confidence, right? Am I getting that?
Yeah, that's close to it. Yeah, exactly. Because what we're training, so again, if you want to get better at throwing a ball, you just throw a ball 10,000 times to get better at it.
Right.
And so it's the same principle as we're using here. It's just the areas of the brain that we're changing are the ones critical to decision making, executive function.
Okay. So you're
And so
giving
when,
exercises.
oh yeah, they're actually that's why it's a training program. I mean, I work with 5-year-olds. They don't need to know what's happening or whatever. They just need to do the exercises. They laugh and they get it, and all of a sudden they're doing better in school or whatever else they're
Uh-huh.
working on. So, and that's what I love about it is it's so simple. I'll give you an example. It's kind of funny. I trained the Marine Corps rifle and pistol teams at Quantico many years ago.
Okay.
And so the first session was with the officers, and they had all kinds of questions. How does the brain work? Da, 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 da. So we spent an hour answering questions. The next day, I actually trained the shooters, the guys actually doing the shooting. And I started to explain, and one Marine raised his hand and said, "Sir, we're Marines. Just tell us what to do and we'll do it." And they did. And of course, they were the shooters. They were the ones their marksmanship improved significantly because they just did it. They didn't have to understand why.
Huh. So, So tell me what that means to me. If I'm your client and I'm working with you, you would say to me, Laureen, you don't have to understand how this works. You just need to do it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, yes and no. Well, we always have a goal, right? So if I'm working with you, Lorraine, it would be what is your primary goal right now? Is it to get more done in less time? Is it to to recover if you're struggling with different things? Is it to play pickleball? Whatever it is, we always focus on one. So you see those, so you in the real world see those improvements quickly, even though all other kinds of things are happening at the same time. We always start with a baseline. So we validated this now over 15 years. We actually use a stopwatch to measure processing speed. And we have a direct correlation between processing speed and the improvement in other parts of your life. So we do a baseline, we start that, and then I take you through some of these exercises. Each one's a little bit harder,
Okay.
and there's some you're gonna struggle with. Now, I usually what I do is I like people to experience it first. So after you've done it, then I'll tell you what happened and why, and then you can
Mhm.
relate to it. But there'll be one in, like the second one, most people really struggle with. But then 20 minutes later, we're doing something even harder and they get through it perfectly. And that's just an example of how fast the brain changes with this type of stimulation.
And there lies the hope here. What you just
Yes.
said, really, and in
Yeah.
terms of what you've witnessed, what you've actually experienced watching the work that you do, we can make huge shifts if
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
motivated. And is this a process that takes years or weeks or
No, that's
months
what I
or
love about it is typically like I had a client yesterday morning and by the end of the first session, we measured her processing speed was almost 20% faster.
wow.
So really fast, and we were going to keep working. So then what happens is, as we continue to work, I continue to make your brain faster, but then we always adjust it to different things.
Mhm.
We kind of customize it to what it is in the real world. But the time typically, we have people their speed improves like 40-50%, especially if they're struggling on the front end. They're struggling. We have people with emotional issues or
Mhm.
depression and things like that. They improve much faster and the changes are permanent, which I love. It becomes their new baseline.
Wow.
So all of a sudden, you notice things are going. People might notice things different in your life, and that's your new baseline going forward. And then there's what I like to leave people with is a quick neural primer they can use anytime during the day. So if you are getting overwhelmed or you do feel yourself like this is going to be a big deal coming up, you can run through it for a few minutes. It's like a quick re-speed up, refocus drill that you can use anytime.
Huh. That's that's great. So I know also you focus on executive function and emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And how does all of that fit with what the work that you do and how it can help women respond with greater clarity to the decisions they're facing in their lives?
Well, part of that again is that anticipation because anytime you come into a new situation, right, somebody, especially a situation you haven't seen before, when you can anticipate, you give your brain just a little bit of an edge so it can prepare for what it needs to do and say, that can help with that a lot. On the emotional intelligence side, we actually where this really came home was I inserted some of my training to a friend's full day emotional intelligence workshop
Okay.
and they'd gotten through the first half. And then I did I only did about 25 minutes of my exercise. And afterwards, I thought, well, let me ask them. I said, is there any part of emotional intelligence, the five components that you did not experience? And they said, no. So it's not, I don't teach anything. So like emotional intelligence, for example, self-awareness, when you're doing this with someone else and it's okay for you to make a mistake, it's okay for them to make a mistake. So that forgiveness comes. And when you start doing them in sync, you actually sync up your thinking, which is why this is so powerful for a lot of teams, military teams, sports teams. And so all those things that kind of hold us back emotionally from having a connection with someone, they go away not because you're trying to make them go away, but just because you're so much more calm, you're more relaxed, you're more forgiving, and your listening is better, so you can listen better. So all those things start to happen again by improving executive function, which is our ability to make decisions.
Wow. This almost sounds too good to be true.
I've had people tell me that. It's amazing. The people, I'm always amazed. So, what happens because typically people have me, like, I'll give you an example that I love. So there's a financial analyst, very overwhelmed at work, getting a little bit older, got a promotion, overwhelmed. So we did our first session on a Friday. The net we continued going, of course. So the next week we expected to hear better, that work was going better, which we did. But he emailed me Monday morning. He said, John, you're not going to believe this. Ran through your neuroprimer Saturday morning. I got more done around the house by noon than normally I would all weekend. And now my wife says that when she talks to me, I'm focused on her. You already made my home life great. I can't wait to get to work. So it's the same thing. I work with some homeschool group and the moms, their ability to, women obviously, homeschool moms have the toughest job, right? Because they've got the
Yeah.
school, they've got home, got everything. And so their ability to do all their planning, their ability to stay relaxed, calm, and be able to, keep a focus on each child at the same time was incredible. It was incredible. So those are the kind of things where the faster brain really relates to our environment in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I can see no reason why you wouldn't want to do this, in all honesty. I mean,
Right.
it just sounds like all aspects of your life improve when your brain is functioning
Yeah. Yeah.
faster, more efficiently, and more brilliantly, right? Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
more
Exactly.
brilliantly is probably the key there.
And
Um,
it's fun too. That's why I love it so much. People laugh. It's like what the Marines call this place in brain games. It's kind of a fun thing. It's not stigma. It's not there's no treatment or anything else involved. No matter what they're struggling with, they just have fun with
so
it.
it sounds like if you're somebody, and this is me, who wants to live their best life, doing this training with you would be a powerful way to make your life less stressful, and
Yeah.
also more empowered to realize your potential.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I like to say, because I've done a lot of work with seniors, I like to say
Mhm.
we're rejuvenating your life, right? So as we get older, we worry about different things because we have ways to tie this into physical improvement. We can engage different parts of the body, doing exercises. As long as you're making decisions while you're using your body, those connections get stronger.
So typically, how long does somebody work with you? Is it a couple of weeks, a couple of months?
It's a good question. So my typical program is 90 days, so 12
Okay.
weeks. And we usually meet once a week, and then I give them homework to do in between. I have like short burst programs, like a 3 hours for different tasks. And I recently developed a certification program, which I am so excited about because there's so many great other providers out there. There's mindset providers, there's business coaches, psychiatrists, parents even I've certified. And so they get the benefits themselves. They can use the same program to help the people they care about, their families, but then they can integrate it right into their existing sessions.
Huh.
So if they've got an hour session with a client, no matter what it is, if they insert a little bit of the exercises at the beginning, the client's engaged, they're happy, they're focused, they get a lot more out of the session from the therapist or the provider anyway. And so it's just a great way to integrate because what I do, I believe, is awesome. But if it's combined with something else, I think it's even
Mhm.
better,
Mhm.
even better.
Well, if I were a woman listening and I think, oh, that's great, but I'm too old and um, I'm too stuck in my old ruts. Really isn't for me. What would you say?
I would say that if that's how you feel, you definitely need to do this because you don't want to give up, right? I mean, our brains change the day day we die. And this is the kind of thing that, I mean, if they've got grandkids, if they've got friends, if they play cards or whatever they do,
Uh-huh.
this is going to help them enjoy their life better because they're not going to be held back. They're not going to feel that they can't keep up. They're not going to feel brain fog. They're not going to feel anything that might take away some of their quality of life.
And you also mentioned this can help too with Alzheimer's?
Yes, yes. Alzheimer's and dementia. I've got a client I've been working with now for a long time, a ministry leader down in Miami. And I started working with him over a year and a half ago. And at the time, he was starting to decline. And we made tremendous progress. I mean, for the long, he was able to lead Bible study again. He's doing a lot of things that we didn't think he was going to be able to. Now, eventually, we can't stop it, right? So now
Right.
he's starting, it's been a year, but I mean, they're so excited. They've gotten a year of much better quality of life than they would have without it.
So
Um,
it can at least slow it down a little bit, right? And
yeah, slow it down a lot. Yeah,
slow it down a
yeah,
lot. Well, that's good to hear. That is really good to hear. So what I know we'll do is we'll put your contact information in the show notes so people can reach out to you if they are
great,
looking to do this work with you. And
great.
I would encourage anyone who's interested in this to make an effort to reach out to John and talk with him about whether it's applicable for you, because I'm going to guess it probably is if you're asking that
Yes,
question.
yeah.
But as we come to a close tonight, I want to offer what I would call a gentle pause for everyone listening. If something in this conversation has landed for you, if you have this feeling that there is a sense of relief, some hope, um, that maybe this is something important to you, don't analyze it. Don't go into your head and think of all the reasons why it won't work. Think of all of the reasons why you can't. What I would encourage you to do is to reach out and connect with John to see if this might be something that would help you. If clarity or confidence has felt harder to access, it does not mean that you're broken. It does not mean that you're behind in any way. It just means that your brain can use some exercises and activities to adapt brilliantly, and leverage all the years of wisdom and knowledge that are inside of you. I love that message that we have so much information in us and we're processing that. And of course, that can take longer, but doesn't have to, right? Adaption is not a dead end. It is proof of capacity. And that means we all have the capacity to grow, and to change. And this is an area that's significantly important to all of us as we get older, our brains, our minds. Neuroplasticity reminds us that change does not come from pushing harder. It doesn't come from thinking better. It comes from training the brain in ways that support you in living the life that you want to live right now. So check those show notes for John's contact information and connect with him, because I think it could potentially change your life in huge, huge ways. And if this conversation has opened something in you, a question of readiness, a sense of what might be possible, I want you to also consider joining me at the end of January for something that I am putting together called the Next Chapter Summit. And this is a free online gathering for women 50 and older who are in the process of navigating change, reinvention, and renewal. And there's more information in the show notes as well about that event called the Next Chapter Summit. But for now, we will call this conversation settled. Um, Attend to yourself after we have ended and notice what feels different, and notice what curiosity do you have about this conversation, and what would you like to know more about? Your brain is still learning, and your next chapter is still unfolding. And so I thank you all for attending and listening and watching tonight. And John, I especially thank you for being our guest
Oh,
this evening
sure, my pleasure.
and sharing your knowledge with my listeners. I think
Yeah,
this could be a life-changing episode for many people.
I think
I
so.
hope they leverage that and take advantage of your connection as well.
Yeah,
So with that, thank
great.
you, everyone.
Thanks, Lorraine.